Sabbath to you all. I'd like to greet you all and say, let's enjoy the Sabbath as we sit comfortably in our homes to enjoy present truth. Firstly, I would like to apologize to you for coming late on the program. There were some technical problems, but I hope they won't come again. So let's sit and enjoy and read the Bible and understand the judgment of the living with theocracy. So welcome you all on board. Last week when we were studying the judgment of the living and theocracy, we found that God mentioned the name of David. Why David? Is he a type of the David of our time? Because when he's going to rule in the Davidic kingdom, in the kingdom where he has put another spirit, which was the spirit in David, in another instrument. That's why we call it Davidic kingdom, because the spirit which is in the servant who will rule with Christ in the kingdom, the one he has promised that he's going to make him ruler of all the things because he was found faithful, giving meat in due season, is the spirit of David. So, but why does God use David? Why is David the express type of the ruler of all? Why is he the one that God has singled out and said he will rule in the kingdom and calls it a Davidic kingdom, which Sister White says in Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 14. You see, she paraphrased in the study Bible and said, the Davidic kingdom shall surely be established. So why did he pick on David? There were so many people in the Bible, so many saints. He had Absalom, David's son. He had Aaron, he had Miriam, he had all these names that are in the Bible, but he says David. Why David? Is David a type? Why is he using David? So we found that when we studied, we saw that the appointment of David was different from the appointment of Saul. Because David came soon after Saul. David is the king who did not even wait for Saul to get old. Because some kings, when they get old and they are tired, that's when they are succeeded, or when they die, they are succeeded. So, but David was appointed when Saul was still energetic in the throne, still wanting to, hang on in the throne. So, why is David a type? So let's first see for ourselves how how Saul was appointed. Let's go back to 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 5. Let's start from there and analyze the points that are in that chapter that will suit David to be a type of the soul. Suit Saul to be a type of the soul who has David in our last time. So we have another drama which was there when David, the son of Jesse, was ruling, was appointed. There was Saul who was still energetic, who was still on the throne. But God had his own. After Saul was not faithful. But let's see how Saul was appointed. Let's enjoy that chapter. Now, 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 5. Start from verse 5. Yeah?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways.
So before they came to Samuel, you can see from previous to Samuel, the people who were ruling Israel were those who God himself, through the theocratic system, appointed. Now this is the kings. Samuel was both king and prophet. So the prophet of old had two designations. That's why we are talking about Elijah coming as a prophet and also coming as David. So the prophet of old was given those two talents. That's why sister was saying, you all call me prophet, but I'm more than a prophet. See, Sister White was a prophet as well as a governor. So this is what comes with that talent of a prophet. God gives a prophetic talent to bind up the prophecies, and at the same time gives a talent to rule. He's a ruler. So David was a ruler, and Samuel was a ruler, ruling Israel, being a prophet as well as a ruler. Do you understand? Now this time Samuel is old. You remember how he was appointed when he was staying with Eli, the priest Eli, and how he was being called by God at night. Why would he call a 3-year-old Samuel to talk to Eli? Because Eli had apostatized, the children had apostatized, so was not good enough to rule Israel. So God was now preparing Samuel to be the takeover ruler. Now here, Samuel now is old. When Israel was being ruled by Samuel, it was nicely peaceful. This is the way God wanted. When the ruler was both prophet and king. So now Samuel is old. They come to him now in verse 5. He says, and they say unto him, what did they say? Repeat that verse.
And said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways.
Right. So this is what was happening now. They were thinking, hey, this old man now is going to die. And who is going to take over? The sons. And the sons already had not proved to the eyes of the people that they were worthy to rule Israel. So, this was a non-fact in that period. But they come to Samuel to say, now, instead of having these children to rule, choose us another king. Because they knew already if Samuel dies, the children were supposed to succeed. But now they were scared if these children succeed, when they are like this, upside down like this, it's going to be chaotic. Now, they came to Samuel, behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. They were not even obedient to their father, these children. Now make us a king to judge us, like all the nations. Someone could easily say, they were right. Yeah, it looked right. It looked right. But listen, it wasn't right with God. Listen to that. They were supposed also to wait upon God to appoint another prophet. When Samuel died, God was mindful, knew there was a prophet to come. Now here, let's hear verse 6.
But the thing displeased Samuel, when they said, give us a king to judge us.
Right.
And Samuel prayed unto the Lord.
Right. So this displeased Samuel, who was the prophet, and the king. So it displeased Samuel, and he went on his knees to report that incident to God. And listen to what God said in verse 7.
And the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee.
Right. So God says to Samuel, yes, I've heard the people, they've said that to you. Hearken to them. Listen to them. They are right. Listen to them. But listen to what God is saying. Further statement.
For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me.
Right. It's not you they are after. It's me. So they did not know that while they knew Samuel's children were not worthy to rule, but God was even aware. They were supposed just to go and kneel down and say, God, prepare the next king. But now they took things up to their hands and said, allow us to choose another king. They want now to be involved. They want to introduce what is called democracy. Because God was ruling with Samuel in a theocratic system. But now the people came to say, no, we want democracy to Samuel. And God is saying, don't worry. It's not after, they are not after you, Samuel. They are after me. So it displeased God. But here, let's hear the further statement. Verse 8.
Verse 8. According to according to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even
God
unto this
knows
day.
that Israel, since they came out of Egypt, this was their mind, to find a king that they are involved in bringing up the king, to say, we want to take this king. This was their ideology. From the time they came out of Egypt, this is what they wanted. That's why they were revolting against Moses, revolting against any king, any prophet like Joshua who took after Moses. They were revolting. That's why there were all these roads. You remember the 12 roads that were put in the temple, and Aaron's rod burden. It was just one thing throughout the wilderness. They were after. Why did Moses come? Who chose? Have you had people asking you questions? Who are you? Like they were asking the question to John the Baptist. Who are you? And he was answering, I'm the voice in the wilderness. Do you understand? So why? Because they're saying, who are you? Because we did not vote for you. Mm-hmm. This is why they say, we did not vote for you. Who are you? When Christ came, they did not vote for Christ. Mm-hmm. Who are you? Right? So, this was the order of their brain, right? From the time they went out of Egypt to the time now they are peacefully being, ruled by Samuel. But now they're saying, allow us to choose now, because they have an excuse. An excuse is that Samuel is now old, so get us involved. Get us in this system, take off the system of God, and put our own system. This is what they were after. Now, let's go step by step. One has to understand, our God is not a God of force. Whatever you ask, He will give you, but you bear the consequences. Mm-hmm. Now, let's hear now.
According to the works which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. Mm-hmm. Now, therefore, hearken unto their voice.
Just raise your voice a bit. Okay.
Now, therefore, hearken unto their voice. Howbeit, yet protest solemnly unto them, and shew them the manner of the king that shall reign over them.
Right. And so God is saying, let's go with their plan. Yeah. This is their plan that they want now. They want to vote for a king. Let's go with their plan. Right? Let's go.
And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over thee.
Samuel has been told by God, go and tell them. Samuel says, this now, it's the prophet of the hour, Samuel, says, this is the type of king you are going to vote for. Listen to that. And this is what the king is going to do. Listen to every nitty-gritty of the king that they were going to vote for. Listen to that. Right, let's hear.
He will take your sons.
Now therefore, which verse are you?
10.
Verse 10.
11.
Right, verse 11. Says, in verse 10 it says, and Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people and asked. And let's hear verse 11. What is this king going to do, right?
And he said, this will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you.
This now is the king you are going to vote for. Listen to that.
He will take your sons.
This king is going to come and take your sons.
And appoint them for himself.
And appoint them to work for himself.
For his chariots.
This is not what Samuel was doing. He is going to, these sons will serve him. And what?
For his chariots.
And also his cars.
And to be his horsemen.
And he is also going to be, these children are going to make sure this king is so benefited by all the horses, all the chariots, all the what. This was not the order of the event with Samuel. Listen to that.
And some shall run before his chariots.
And now, it's not only buying him those cars, but there will be people running when he is in the car, in front of the cars. These sons of your sons will be doing that when the king is inside. This is not what Samuel was doing. Listen to that.
And he will appoint him captains over 1,000 and captains over 50.
He will start by making sure they are captains over thousands, captains over, all these people only to save himself. Listen to that.
And he will set them to ear
and
his
yet
ground.
They had a quiet prophet who did not want all those things. The prophet Samuel did not have all that display of, power of being saved. He didn't. He was saving the people. But listen to this king you are going to rule, you are going to appoint. This is what you are going to appoint. They are being told in advance. But if it was me that day, I would say, what? Is this what we are going to start doing? But listen, they were so foolish. They were told exactly what the king is going to do. The one that you are voting for. And yet God had, through his theocratic system, put a king who did not have that display. Now, listen to what this king is going to do. Listen more. Yeah?
And will set them to ear his ground,
right,
and to reap his harvest.
Right. Even if he has a field, your sons will go and reap his harvest and bring it to his barn and do everything for him. If this king needed a bath, people were going to bath, were going to wash. If this king needed to be carried to the toilet, if this king is going to be saved. Did you understand? They could have said, what? Samuel didn't do that. Listen to that. We are comparing these two systems. So you will see God's system was correct. Now let's hear.
And to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots.
And when he has wars, this king will use your sons to make them instruments of his war. Come, you go and fight there. Come, fight that one. Come, fight that one. Come, and chariots carrying him while they are fighting. This was not with Samuel. Listen to that. Listen. God has sent Samuel to tell them in advance that this king you want to vote for, he had already seen which king they were targeting amongst themselves. So God is telling them exactly what is in the thought of Saul. That this king you are taking has got that disposition, is going to do this. Listen to that. Listen.
And he will take your daughters to be...
And apart from making your sons carry him, do everything for himself, he will go even to your daughters. Listen to the daughters.
He will take your daughters to be confectionaries.
And
to
the
be
daughters
cooks.
will be confectionaries around him. Listen to that.
And to be cooks.
Cooks.
And to be bakers.
Bakers.
And he
when he needed bread, your daughters come to bake. When he needed anything, confectionaries, anything that he needed, he would just use your daughters. This is the king you want to vote for. Listen to that. Listen.
And he will take your fields.
And he also will take your fields.
And your vineyards.
And your vineyards.
And your olive yards.
And your olive yards.
Even the best of them.
And the best, you come in your field and select the best and say, this is mine.
And give them to his servants.
And also takes all and gives his servants, they eat and be merry. Listen to that. Listen. This king.
And he will take the 10th of your seed.
And he'll also come and take your tithes. Your tithes for himself. Listen to that, what he does.
And he will take
the 10th. That's the 10th is the tithe. Right? Listen to that.
And he will take the 10th of your seed.
Yeah.
And of your vineyards.
Yeah.
And give to his officers.
And
to his servants.
He select only his officers, his ministers only. Upon the 8 gifts, what he does, he will only select his own gift. The gift which is paid most in the 8 gifts. We have prophets, apostles, evangelists, teachers, whatever elders, whatever officers that they are. But amongst all these officers, some are only carrying names. But where does the pay go to? To his own, the ministers only, pastor only. But what about the evangelist? What about the prophet? What about the apostle? What about the teachers? What about these other gifts of miracles and everything? Who is paying them? This is there in the appointment of Saul. Listen to that. Let's hear. What is this Saul going to do?
And you will take the 10th part of your seed,
The tithe.
and of your
from your
vineyard,
field, yes.
and give to his officers.
And also just gives to, only his officers, but the rest who are working, no. Right? Listen.
And you will take your men servants,
right,
and your maid servants,
right,
and your goodliest young men.
Did you hear that? Mm-hmm.
And your goodliest young men,
right,
and your asses, and put
everything
them
that
to
is
his work.
best in the earth is going to be his. In that 12 tribes of Israel, he will take all your best. This was not with Samuel. This was not with Samuel. Right? Mm-hmm.
He will take the 10th of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants.
You can see, you can go on and on with that chapter and see how bad Saul was going to be. But apart from that, listen to what the people will say. Let's read on.
And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king,
right,
which ye have chosen.
You will cry. You have never cried with Samuel. But with this king you want to vote for, you will cry. And God will hear you crying. Listen to that.
And the Lord will not hear you in that day.
And when you cry, God will just turn your back. Won't even listen to you because you asked for a king. Did you hear that?
Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel.
Even after narrating all these qualities which were going to come with Saul, did the people hear? Have you heard people, when you talk to them about him, what is the tithe? What is the 10%? And they ask, is it of the gross or from the net? You tell them, Deuteronomy chapter 14 verse 22 simply tells you that it's from the increase. That is the profit. So not from the gross. But what do they? Nevertheless, I will follow them. I will follow Saul. I'll follow. You talk to them. You talk to them that the first and second tithe. The second tithe is for the feast. It's nothing to do. It says so in Deuteronomy chapter 14 that the second tithe is nothing to do with the Levites. The Levites, go to Deuteronomy 14. You hear that 14 second tithe has nothing to do with the Levites. Clearly. But listen to what the people say. We will nevertheless want Saul. Go to that. Chapter 14, verse 22. Go to next where it says the hair. That's the one that I'm looking for. Go in the middle. Right. So you find people will want this operation. When I tell you, thou shalt tithe the increase. Go start from verse 22. Let me help you.
Verse 27.
Right. Start from verse 22 and then go to 27. Yeah.
Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed.
So it's the profit. But they will tell you, no. You bring the cross. And the cross what? 10 plus 10, which is the 10%. And then the other 10%, the second tithe, also bring it. But Sister White says it's nothing to do. Go to verse 27. It's nothing to do with the Levite.
And the Levite that is within thy gates,
right?
Thou shalt not forsake him, for he hath no part nor inheritance with thee.
He has no part nor inheritance with that tithe. But don't forsake. Just say, okay, you just take this, but the rest is mine. Now, God said he will take all the full brim of the best out of you, this king. But nevertheless, after people were told all that, did they say, no, let's go back to the plan that God had? No. They said, we don't care. Let Saul come. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice. Verse 19 there. They refused to obey the voice of Samuel. They said, no, Samuel is doing that so that he continues, so that he put the throne to his children. So people did not even listen. Until God had to appoint David, when they were busy now crying. He was killing the people that he thought these were wizards, these were witch doctors, with witchcraft, and this one he was killing. He did exactly what God said, what God prophesied. He was so bad, too bad. So, now let's go to our subject. So why David was the type? Why is David the type? Because when David was appointed after the one who was ruling Israel was thus appointed by votes. Did you hear? Did they appoint Saul by votes? Yes, they had to vote. for Saul. Right? Now let's hear go down in the paragraph where he says, although chosen by the people, down there after Samuel 8 verse 5. Although chosen, that we are reading this from Testimonies for the Church, volume 5, page 211, is going to add at the bottom, but here we are still, although chosen by God, right, that's what I want.
And although chosen by the people, yet the officers were nevertheless accepted by God to be the rulers over his people now, as Saul was anciently.
Right.
Just as he betrayed his trust, however, by disobeying the word of God, as spoken to him by the prophet Samuel, so the present church organization, the ancient men, before the house, have, says the prophet, to the church today betrayed their trust.
Right. So that's what we saw. So this is what God said. The last time we'll have another David. Why? He had to appoint David when Saul was there. And what did he promise David? That there was still another. Let's go to First Chronicles 17 verse 11. He now, when he was appointed, we know how he was appointed. You cannot continue repeating how he was appointed. But when he was appointed by God himself, he was now promised that in the last time, when the kingdom is going to be established, there will be a king. Let's hear. Start from verse 17. Verse 11.
Okay.
Chapter 17, verse 11.
And it shall come to pass, when thy days be expired, that thou must go to be with thy fathers.
Right. That we met this verse last week. Yeah. That David was now promised that when your term is finished, you're going to rest. Yeah. There were no, with God, there was no term. And sometimes people are elected and they go maybe 4 years or some 5 years, some 10 years. But when God's theocratic system elected a prophet, the term was determined by his life.
Yeah.
So David now is told, when your term is finished, you're going to die. You're going to rest. That's God's theocratic term. Now, what else? Let's hear from that verse.
That I will raise up thy seed.
Yeah, start from verse 11. Let's hear.
And it shall come to pass, when thy days be expired, that thou must go to be with thy fathers, that I will raise up thy seed after thee, which shall be of your sons.
Right.
Which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom.
Right. So when you are dead, I will raise your seed, what's it? I will raise up thy seed after thee. Somebody raised after David. But it's not Solomon. Because you can see from the further sentence that this is not Solomon. This king, which shall be thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. You can say Solomon was the son of David, but the kingdom was rent. It was not established. It was rent in twain. But here, this kingdom God is talking about was not rent. Let's hear from the further verses, verse 12. Yeah.
He shall build me an house, and I will establish his throne forever.
Forever. So that one was not forever. The throne of David, after he was laid to rest, when it was taken over by Solomon, did not reign forever. So what did God mean? He meant there is a throne after David was laid, which is from the sons of David, which shall live as a kingdom forever. Which one is it? When you're talking about the kingdom going to be established, and it's going to be a Davidic kingdom, do you understand from this verse? Now let's hear verse 13. It shall be established forever. Now let's hear verse 13.
I will be his father, and he shall be my son.
When that kingdom which is raised forever, God will be the father to the person who is reigning. And he shall be a son.
And I will not take my mercy away from him.
And his mercy will stay upon this ruler. And yet in the time of Solomon, who was David's seed, the mercy did not stay upon Solomon. So you see, it's a different king being established where the mercy of God will stay forever. Let's hear more. Let's hear more about that.
And I will be his father, and he shall be my son.
Right.
And I will not take my mercy away from him, as I took it from him that was before thee.
Do you see that? So he had taken mercy from Saul. And when Solomon came, he also took the mercy, because he lost 10 tribes to go under Jeroboam. And the 2 tribes went under his son Rehoboam. So the mercy was taken. But here he is promising a king where he is not going to take his mercy. And the king will rule on the throne forever with a kingdom. And God is saying he will be his father, and this king is going to be his son forever. So you can see it's not Solomon. Clearly, it's not Solomon, unless you are down. Now, let's go to verse 14. Let's hear about this king.
But I will settle him in mine house.
That king will be settled in God's house. Repeat again.
But I will settle him in mine house.
Right.
And in my kingdom forever.
That king now won't taste death. Will be settled in the kingdom, in the house of God forever. Did you understand that? That's not Solomon. That's not Solomon. Now let's hear.
And his throne shall be established forevermore.
Forevermore. So we are now agreeing, as we are studying, that that king is not Solomon. So which one then is the one that will settle in the kingdom, in the house of God, and the throne is settled forevermore? That's the kingdom. That's the kingdom David, not the previous David, or not the previous Solomon. But we have a future David who is in the judgment of the living right now, and God will find him distributing present truth, giving meat in juices in Matthew 24, and he will make him ruler of all. That is the King David. Do you understand? You should rightly divide the word of truth and mix it with other verses which are talking of the same thing. This is what God wants. Study and rightly divide the word of truth, so that they all say one thing from each chapter. You know where it is talking about, what Matthew has been talking about, what Revelation has been talking about, what Daniel has been talking about, what Psalms was talking about, what First Samuel is talking about, what First Chronicles is talking about. There, God is proud. He says, a workman would rightly divide the word of truth, and God is proud of you when you do that. Right? So let's hear. We want to understand more about the judgment of the living. Yeah? Let's go again to another point. Can you go to 1 Samuel chapter 31, verse 4? Want to understand, yeah? Right.
Verse 4. Then said Saul unto his armor bearer,
right?
Draw thy sword, and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me.
What had happened there? That's where Saul died.
Yeah.
Did you see? Instead, when Saul, we are meeting how he did the dreadful death that this king met. That he actually had to design his death. You thrust the sword to me. We saw that. Why? Because he has seen that the kingdom is already taken by David. So after running with David was a fugitive all these years. He surrendered. But alas, how did he end? He ended being the one who died, not David. Do you understand? Now let's go. I want to understand more from Spirit of Prophecy. General Conference Bulletin, 34th session, Volume 4, extra number 1, April 3, 1901, page 25. Or COLs 1 and 2. All these are quotations in the spiritual prophets. Let's read them and hear what they say. Right? You may.
You have
no right.
You have no right to manage unless you manage in God's order.
Right. Between the two, David and Saul, there was one who had the right to manage. Who was the one who had the right to manage? You see how strict God wanted the ruler to be. The ruler to be selected. When you see Samuel going now to the house of David to select, to the house of Jesse to select a king, that God made sure it's not men who will do that. Who is going to select? It's not a vote which is going to select the king. No. You see officers, how many? When I say they are voting for ministers and pastors, it's true, they are. Why? Because when they say there is no prophet, so they are the ones voting. Because when appointed by God, it's through a prophet. Otherwise, God would have said the sons of Jesse were 8. So sit down and vote for a king. The 8 sons would have sat down to vote for a king. Right. But they would find no king there. Because God's system is no vote. God was the one supposed to appoint David. Now, if you express with your own lips that there is no longer any prophet after Sister White died, so how then are these officers being selected? How then? What is the question there? If the question is, then who then these times, when there is no prophet, who is selecting these? That's why God comes up with a ministry under David. So that when David is selected by God, God will further allow David to select officers who come only for from a theocratic system. To see, you find now, instead when we are used to do pastors who are voted for, we have institution background or whatever, God comes up with a pure, true ministry where only him select workers through his prophet like he did to Samuel. Did you understand that? Now, when God now sent Samuel to select, even when Samuel with his own eyes wanted to select, he wanted to select the first one, the Eliab. But when Eliab came as a giant, God said to him, don't look at the eyes, don't look at the stature, don't look at anything physical. So what was God looking at? God was looking at the heart. Don't look at the gender, don't look anyway. He was looking at the heart of somebody who will reign in obedience to the law of God. Not someone who is not the parts of the body, not what dress or what suit. He was looking at someone whose heart will obey. So it could be anyone. It could be anyone who God just says, that's it. So here, the way he was selected, David was selected, knew that he was imbued with the Holy Spirit. Because it was, the cup tilted itself. The oil ran on David's head. That was the symbol of the Holy Spirit. And he knew that in the time of David, the kingdom will be safe and sound. Because there's somebody with the Spirit of God who is reigning the 12 tribes of Israel with the Spirit of God. That's theocracy. Do you understand? Now here, we were told you have no right to manage unless you manage in God's order. What is God's order? Theocracy. So, but when you tell everyone, the whole world, that there is no prophet, so there is no theocracy. So what is happening? For any point you have to sit down and vote. It's all chaotic. That is chaotic. To God, God does not have an order like that. That is chaos. Unless you come and say, we have a prophet. We have a prophet. After Sister White died, then we know there is no chaos. But after Sister White died, there is no prophet. Then we see other people, one of prophets, who are taking charge and saying they are the voice of God. There is chaos. There is chaos. I want to tell you. Now, let's hear that whole paragraph from that bulletin. This year, you have no right to manage unless you manage in God's order. Listen that.
Are you under the control of God?
Are you under the control of God?
Do you see your responsibility to Him?
Do you see when you manage your responsibility to God? Is it matching the responsibility that David had? It was the appointment which was very important. Was it appointed by men or by a prophet? It was not by a prophet. So what is that management coming from? Which order is that? Because the order should come when God raised Samuel the prophet to go to the house of Jesse to select a prophet. There was no vote. In the church things, there was no vote. In those who were worshiping God under Israel, there was no vote. Now he's saying, Sister White now is saying, are you managing according to the order? Do you have the responsibility? Now let's hear furthermore what she says.
That these men...
Listen to what she says. That these men
should stand in a sacred place to be as the voice of God to the people.
Right.
As we once believed the conference to be. That is past.
That Sister White declared in her days before she died that is past. That we think they are the voice of God, that is past. It was in 1901 she declared that. General Conference Bulletin, 34th session, volume 4, extra number 1, April 3, 1901, page 25. She declared that that is past. There is no longer any voice of God there. It's past. Why? Because the order was not in the theocratic system. Now let's hear from tract 8, but I think it's coming from Testimonies to Ministers, page 468. Yeah, this revelatory statement.
This revelatory statement conclusively proves that after the historical Minneapolis meeting in 1888, when the leaders rejected both the message and the counsel which was given them, the Lord did not any longer regard the Laodiceans as
This is what caused the rejection in 1888. Full stop. Because the order had changed. Why did they not listen to Sister White in volume 1, selected messages 233 to 230, who says, I'm asked about the message of A.T. Jones. Who is this, the schoolmaster which they are bringing? Which they were saying is both the ceremonial and the moral law. This is what they wanted the church now to keep both laws. But the church was refusing to keep both laws. The church wanted only the moral law. So now Sister White says, I've been asked what is supposed to be kept in the schoolmaster. It says, both the moral and the ceremonial law should be kept. But when they refuse, it says, it's no longer the voice of God. That is no longer the voice of God. Because they did not accept the prophetic utterance of Sister White that it should be both laws to be kept. Finish. Then it was a soul taking over. This is exactly what happened. His soul took over after the rejection of 1888 message. Who do you think took over? What do you think took over up until our time? Who do you think took over? Then, if Saul took over, what are we expecting at the end? David. David now should come. That's why we are talking about the Davidic kingdom. Why? Because David succeeded Saul while Saul is still ruling. So, why David at a time? This is what happened. Right? Now, let's go to the next. God calls now. God calls.
God calls for a spiritual revival and a spiritual
reformation. So Sister White, after the rejection, said, now we need a reorganization. We saw what a spiritual revival and reformation is. It will explain itself. Let's hear from the next paragraph. A revival.
A revival and reformation must take place under the ministration of the Holy Spirit.
Right?
Revival and reformation are two different things.
Why did she call for a revival and reformation? Because they rejected the 1888 message. Clear. So we need to... So what do you think she wanted? She wanted a reorganization, because what is a revival? A revival, we have been told, is a renewal of the a revival and reformation. Listen to a revival signifies a renewal of spiritual life, a quickening of the powers of the mind and heart, a resurrection from spiritual death. But what is a reformation? She said the reformation signifies a reorganization, a change in ideas. We saw these ideas which we needed to change. What ideas? That both laws should be kept, the moral law and the ceremonial. We should change that idea, that we are only there for the Sabbath and the Ten Commandments and that's it. We are there for both laws, because they are the both laws that were tampered with by the men of sin. So we need that revival and reformation. Let's read. Reformation signifies
a reorganization, a change in ideas and theories, habits and practices.
Right. Do you understand? So the habits should be changed. The practices should be changed. The ideas and theories should all be changed. You know exactly all the theories that we have been brought up with. They should change. We need that done. But thank God, he prepared all that reorganization and reformation by giving us Elijah, who comes as Elijah to revive spiritual, and David to reorganize. For the kingdom is going to be set up. Right? This we're reading from Christ Our Righteousness, page 154. Right? Yeah. And reprinted from Review and Herald, which was February 25, 1902. This is what we're taking this information from, right? And let's go to further statement to Testimonies to Ministers, page 468, where it starts and says, servants. I want you to start from where it says, where do you start from? From, and now, having long since granted. It will come as a comment from A tract 49.2, right? Down below. Do you want me to read?
Okay.
We found it.
And now, having long since granted the popular demand to organize themselves in fulfillment of the type, God warns that his forbearance is come to an end today, just as it did then.
Right. So, was the admonition to reorganize or to revive, was it taken? No. So that's why it says, and now, they continued without the revival and reformation. The revival was to bring these two laws back, which had been rejected in 1888. But they continued without bringing them until today. These two laws have not been called. So, A tract 50.1. Let's hear. God calls now.
God calls for a spiritual revival and reformation.
Right.
Unless this takes place, those who are lukewarm will continue to grow more abhorrent to the Lord.
Right. Unless the revival and reformation takes place, then those people who are supposed to be revived will be abhorrent in front of God until God says to Laodicea, I'll spew thee. Yeah. This is the warning. This is why the warning was there. Let's hear it from another exposition here where Sister White declares a great mistake. What did they rush for? A great mistake.
A great mistake has been made by some who profess present truth by introducing merchandise in the course of a series of meetings, and by their traffic diverting minds from the object of the meetings. If Christ were now upon earth, he would drive out these peddlers and traffickers, whether they be ministers or people. We are reading
from volume 1, Testimonies to Ministers, volume 1, page 471 and 472. That's where we are taking all this information, right?
If Christ were on earth, he would drive out these peddlers and
all these errors started creeping in. So Sister White is taking from 471, testimonies to minister, that now we started seeing, because the abhorrent part of it, we see people coming to trade in the church, trade in merchandise. This is what he's talking about. Make a good discourse of a sermon. After the sermon, start selling a book, start selling that. This is what Sister White is talking about. All this was coming because now they have rejected to revive and reform, and then they continue to do all that. Yeah, right?
If Christ were now upon earth,
right,
he would drive out these peddlers and traffickers, whether they be ministers or people, with a scourge of small cords, as when he entered the temple anciently, and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves.
Right.
And said unto them, It is written, My house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. These traffickers might have pleaded as an excuse that the articles they held for sale were for sacrificial offerings.
Right.
But their object was to get gain, to obtain
You
means to accumulate.
read more about it on your own, on that Testimonies, volume 1, page 471 and 472, and see all these wrongs that Sister White is talking about. They came because of failure to revive and reform. And here, go to the paragraph there, down there, those who have trusted. It's on volume 5, page 8. You'll find that that's why now God goes further to say, because this revival and reformation has not been met, he now promises that there will be a swap over. A fresh ministry which comes to take the place of the previous ministry. But want to find it from the Spirit of Prophets, volume 5, page 80. Start with saying those who have trusted.
Those who have trusted to intellect,
right,
genius, or talent will not then, after the purification, stand at the head of rank and file. They did not keep pace with the light. They are self-sufficient, independent of God, and he cannot use them.
Right.
The Lord has faithful servants who, in the shaking, testing time, will be disclosed to view.
So now we understand the reason why God's promise is a shaking.
Yeah.
Because the revival and reformation was not adhered to, which Sister White advised after the rejection of the 1888 message. So God is saying he will now shake. What is the shaking? When he chooses fresh instruments under the ministry of David or under the ministry of the prophet who will usher the kingdom. Then God introduces what is a shaking, because some will refuse and some will take up the ministry, and he will come up with a pure, true ministry. It's the same which Malachi chapter 3 was talking about, where he says he will raise a messenger of the covenant who will come and make sure all these errors are eradicated, right? And let's hear more. Why is that all coming? It's because God had rejected Saul and now wants to pull over with David, who comes with a fresh ministry of pastors, evangelists, prophets, apostles. All these other ministries are put back in the ministry of Elijah, the prophet who will usher the kingdom, so that they are without spot or wrinkle. Otherwise, if there is no revival and reformation or reorganization, then it all means we will go so abhorrent in front of the throne of God. But God, with his mercy, introduces Elijah in the last time to revive and reform everything. So let's go, just as Saul's outward, go down in the paragraph. Yeah.
Just as Saul's outward show.
It's extract 53.2. That's where it,
Just as Saul's outward show resulted,
right,
consequently, only in his being dethroned by another king, so likewise shall the great men of today, those who are the head of the work, and who trust to intellect, genius, or talent, be replaced by those who, though not having a polished outward appearance, are to be disclosed to view at this time as revealing the pure brightness of genuine Christian character.
So it was mixing between Testimonies, volume 5, page 80, that this is why then we have another ministry, which Sister White is saying, those who trusted in geniuses and talent and science forces so-called are not going to be the head of the rank and file. God comes up with a clear ministry, discloses to view those ministers which he had hidden when Saul was still reigning. Now they come up under David's ministry. Do you see, this is a prophecy, right? And let's hear Saul furthermore.
As Saul, furthermore, defied God by refusing to abdicate the throne.
So what happens when Saul of our town, now we are saying Saul, the previous Saul, refused to come off the throne. And Saul of our time, after Sister White has said, revive and reorganize, should have also seen that he has been rejected and come off the throne and let David take off. Why we always continue to say these feasts were nailed to the cross? This is the same message A.T. Jones and Wako now brought. Why we are continuing is an effort to stay on the throne. Is to nullify everything that God is bringing. God brought prophets after Sister White. Saul is nullifying them. Brought Viti whatever, Brother Roden, Sister Roden, now the Elijah of the time. Saul continues to reject all the prophets that God will bring. So this is an effort to stay on the throne by rejecting all messages coming from God. Do you understand? Now, let's go to testimonies. Testimonies. Testimonies to ministers. Page 300. There. Okay.
As Saul, furthermore, defied God by refusing to abdicate the throne, and by seeking the life of his anointed King David.
Right.
So now, at the sounding of the trumpet today,
right, so go to where he says they are attempting to accept his throne. Under testimonies to ministers there.
They're attempting to usurp his throne by determining that they are to rule the denomination until the end of this world. And they're availing themselves
of every chance.
And they're availing themselves of every chance to cast us out of their midst in order to safeguard their control over it. Those who are doing this are they who the prophet Ezekiel prophetically heard saying, this city is the cauldron and we be the flesh.
Right. So how does Saul maintain the throne? By making sure whoever professes any present truth will be disfellowshipped out. Out. Because feels strongly that this person who is bringing present truth, if he is in my midst, will take over my throne. So this is why Saul continues now to say anyone who utter any statement to show that he's been in contact with this present truth will be disfellowshipped. By that, he tries to cling to the throne. And yet there is a David who God now is leading. And this David will triumph into the kingdom message, into the establishment of the kingdom with God, and his kingdom will reign forever. Do you understand? They're doing every possible.
Doing everything possible to exalt. They are now doing everything possible to exalt and to perpetuate themselves in power and to be rid of those who have, in the name of the Lord, published peace and brought to them the good tidings that the wicked shall no more pass through thee. He is utterly cut off.
All right. So God has raised the prophet and those who follow, who are keeping the feasts which were refused or rejected in 1888. And by that, they are publishing peace, which has been promised in Nahum chapter 1, verse 15, that these are publishing good tidings, bringing this, O Judah, perform thy vow and keep thy solemn feast. These are the ones now under the ministry of David. Do you understand? Right. And let's hear also on 8 tract 54.1. Those who desire
to know the truth for themselves as to what kind of treatment we have received at the hands of the church officials, as David at the hands of Saul.
Go and see how the people who have present truth has received such abuses. These were the abuses, antitype to David's abuses from Saul. What is it that he got from Saul? He was a fugitive. Saul didn't even want to see David, because seeing David meant that his throne was gone. So he was after David all the time. This is the abuse that David, received. That now the then Saul, which is our time, is hunting every way, in the pulpits and every way, looking for anyone who might be in the present truth. Is an antitype of how Saul was looking for David everywhere, trying to kill David. This is exactly the same, haunting David, making sure that David is killed. But David was the appointed, anointed one by God. That's the difference with Saul. This is the only thing that made Saul very jealous. Do you understand? Saul was jealous because he knew I wasn't appointed by God. I was appointed by people. That's that fact only. He was jealous of David. Why? Because he knew. Why do you think the priests were jealous of Christ? They knew Christ was appointed. Some even exclaimed it. And they were being shushed. They were being sent to silence. They knew he was appointed. They saw people flocking, making sure the people who were simple and innocent knew that he was the Son of God. But they were only jealous that they were not appointed the way Christ was appointed. That's the only demarcation between Saul and David. That's why Saul continued to hunt for David every way, looking for a way possible to nullify and make him of none effect, so that he continues to cling to the throne. Do you understand? This is a prophecy of our time. We should understand it in the judgment of the living. This is our prophecy, right? In rejecting the message, right?
In rejecting the message which has come to them with warnings and reproofs, and in continuing in their evil ways, our brethren are compelling the Lord to cut them down by the slaughter weapons of Ezekiel 9.
So what does that all signify? Why does God prepare Ezekiel 9 with slaughter weapons? When he established the kingdom, the slaughter will be going on. This is how Saul died. He had to take his armor bearer to say, you kill me so that I die. So in actual fact, he died of the slaughter. He was slaughtered. But what they are saying in rejecting even the warning of Ezekiel 9 is because of this wishful thinking of making sure that they cling until the pearly gates. There is no pearly gates there. There's no pearly gates unless the fifth angel, the five angels' messages are preached clearly to the people. You cannot profess a pearly gates with the third angel. You need five. So here, read on this here, unless they, though on the way, right?
Though on the way to suicide with Saul, yet they are saying in their heart, the Lord will not do good, neither would they do evil. Would he do evil? He is too merciful to visit his people in judgment. Thus,
that's peace
and safety is the cry for men who will never again lift up their voice like a trumpet to show God's people their transgressions in the house of
volume
Jacob.
5, Testimonies for the Church, page 211. What is peace and safety? They say the Lord is merciful. The Lord won't perform Ezekiel 9. The Lord is too merciful for us. And they are saying peace, peace. That's what Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 1. You say that when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction comes. You understand? Let's go to as Saul still further.
As Saul still further was responsible for the death not only of his sons, but also of the people. So the ministry will be responsible for the men, maidens, and little children who fail to receive the seal, and who consequently perish in the slaughter.
Right, in the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, they will perish. Who will be responsible for all these people who go? Ezekiel chapter 9 is saying, go in with a sword and come not near anyone with the man. Who is responsible? So, you understand, right? Nevertheless,
despite their great sin and certain doom, David the type reveals the fact that though we may cut the skirt of their robes,
right,
while they are bitter and wrath.
You remember what happened that time? Or maybe we can go to it. First Samuel, go to First Samuel, chapter 24, there, verse 3 to 4. You know, we are being told that though David cut the robe, we want to see what happened. Did this actually happen? Now let's go to
And he came to the sheepcotes by the way,
right,
where was a cave, and so went in to cover his feet. And David and his men remained in the sides of the cave.
Do you see what happened? There was a privilege there for David now to take over. But listen to what happened.
And the men of David said unto him, Behold, the day of which the Lord said unto thee, Behold, I will deliver thine enemy into thine hand.
Right. And the people with David, they say, oh, now God has given you. He has given you. Listen to that.
Behold, I deliver thy enemies into thine hand, that thou mayest do to him, as it shall seem good unto thee. Then David arose and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe privately. So
you see, David didn't kill him. He just cut off the robe. Right? Finish verse 4.
And it came to
verse
pass.
4.
Verse 4.
It's finished. Okay. So start nevertheless, despite.
Nevertheless, despite their great sin.
55.2, that's what, yeah.
Nevertheless, despite their great sin and certain doom,
right,
David the type reveals the fact that though we may cut the skirt of their robes,
right,
while they are bitter and wrath against us,
right,
and are chasing us around the sheepcotes,
right,
or that we may take the spear and cruse of water from their bolster, while they are in deep sleep from the Lord, or that we may, as we find them asleep within the trench, or covering their feet in the hiding places,
right,
have them at our mercy, with the power and the opportunity to do them much injury. Yet in no case would we hurt them in the least, but rather would befriend them.
Yeah. When they are doing all this, they are making us fugitives. They are making us blocking everywhere, blocking the gates, blocking everywhere. Our duty is to be friends with them. We befriend them. Though they turn their backs on us, they do everything they can possibly do like they did to David. But look at what David did. Instead of killing Saul, he picked the skirt of the robe and cut it just to show that I have no intention to kill you. Nothing to do with you. It's only the will of God that we are after. Seek ye first the will of God, his righteousness, and everything shall be added. We have no aim to have anything, any hatred or anything against them, but our aim is for them and us to be saved. That's where we are. You understand? Right? Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 22, verse 2, and hear there.
Verse 2. And everyone that was in distress, and everyone that was in debt, and everyone that was discontented, gathered themselves unto him, and he came and became a captain over them. And there were with him about 400 men.
Right. So you see, he had 400 men who were in distress, distressed by Saul. Yeah. So that's why I say why David is a type. It's because of the action of Saul, which matches the action of the Saul of our time. So God appointed somebody called David because we have exactly a copycat of what was happening in David's time. Now, he had 400 men who were in distress. Who was distressing them? Saul, hunting them left, right, and center. Now, let's go to the to 8th tract, and here it's going to combine with Testimonies, volume 6, page 427. Right? And
while they are persecuting us,
right?
as so persecuted.
Are you being persecuted, brethren? I've been cast out of churches. Don't worry. This is what they did to David. Now, while they are persecuting us, listen to that.
As Saul persecuted David,
right?
Everyone that is in distress and everyone that is in debt and everyone that is in discontent will, as the type also shows, join us.
Right. Everyone is in distress, who is persecuted everywhere in four corners of the world when they are trying to stand for the truth. Everyone in distress, everyone that is in debt, everyone that is in discontent, that the church is saying this one is wrong because of the present truth, will for sure join us. For sure is part of us, is our brethren. Wherever you are in the four corners of the earth, if you are being persecuted for any point in the spiritual prophecy, you are part of us. Let's join hands. Let's join hands. Now let's hear. Whereas,
all who are neither cold nor hot, lukewarm, who are satisfied, are with the angel of the church of Laodiceans.
Right. So this is how God will separate the wheat from the tares. Who are with David? Those who are in distress when they are trying to echo, be it any point in the spiritual prophecy, be it for vegetarianism. Some are vegetarian, they have that point, and they are being persecuted for that. Some are being persecuted for different things that are found in the spiritual prophecy. All of them will have to join hands in the last and be the wheat. And the tares will remain under the leadership of Laodicea. This is separation. Let both grow together until the harvest. As we are starting the harvest in these days, we are starting the harvest. Before the harvest, okay. We should be knowing what the harvest. And when we are studying like that, furthermore, we are being persecuted. But that's not persecution. That's harvest. Amen. So the persecution identifies who is being harvested. Do you understand? Now, read one less here.
Critical danger.
Start from where it starts.
Whereas, all who are neither cold nor hot, lukewarm, satisfied, are with the angel of the church of Laodiceans in critical danger of remaining wretched and miserable, and poor and blind and naked.
Right. This is what remains under Laodicea. What will remain? You remain seeing someone who is wretched, poor. Why wretched? Wretched, poor. Why poor? They don't have the message of the fourth and fifth angel. They are poor, naked. You are not dressed with that message. Have you seen this parable of a man who had no wedding garment? That's the fourth and the fifth angel's message. Poor, wretched, naked, blind. The worst thing, know it not. Do you understand? Somebody who doesn't even know that this is how I appear. You don't know. Naked, you are poor, blind. You don't see it. This is what Laodicea is called by God. Yeah? In the foregoing
exposition, we see that those who respond to the Good Shepherd's voice are typified by David's followers.
Right. So those who respond to the call under David, under a revival and reformation and reorganization with two laws, will fall under David. Do you understand?
And that those who do not respond are typified by Saul and his followers.
Right. So that's how the parable, the story of David and Saul, how it is fulfilled in our time. Now, let's go to the parable, Luke's parable there. It says in Luke's parable.
In Luke's parable of the Great Supper.
If you want to read it, you read it in Luke chapter 14, verse 17 to 24. Right. Let's read the parable. Let's hear. 14 verse 17, yeah?
And sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready.
Right.
And they all with one consent began to make excuse.
Did you hear?
The first said unto him, I have bought a piece of ground,
right,
and I must needs go and see it.
right,
I pray thee, have me excused.
right.
And another said, I have bought...
Because these were people who were beaten, right? Look at their excuses.
I have bought a 5 yoke of oxen,
right,
and I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused.
right.
And another said, I have married a wife,
right,
therefore I cannot come. So that servants came and shewed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, Go quickly into the streets and lanes of the city.
We all know this story, right? We won't waste time on it. But let's go in Luke's parable. That's Luke's parable, right?
In Luke's parable of the Great Supper,
right,
Christ again brings to view both classes.
So in Luke's parable is bringing both classes, the wheat and the tares, or those under David and those under Saul, right?
On the one hand, Saul's sympathizers prefigure in the parable those who excuse themselves on the grounds that they were too busy with the cares of this life.
Why do they not keep the new moon? The cares of the life. They're busy. Is it not true? Under Saul, yes. Under Laodicea, yes. Is it the cares of life that makes you not keep the feast? Yes, it's true, it's correct. Yeah, because the new moon comes in the middle of the week and you are busy with the shifts. Yeah, we are busy. We are busy. That's under Saul, under Laodicea. Right? Let's hear.
They're so busy with the cares of this life.
Right.
And who consequently, with the one consent, began to make excuse.
Look at the excuses. Right?
The first, saying unto him, I have bought a piece of ground.
I have got a project I'm working for. Right? This is what happened. So if I don't stop and keep the feast, if I stop and keep the feast, the project won't come out. Did you hear? Right?
I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee.
So we are saying 3 times a year, go out to Jerusalem and worship God. They say, what? 3 times I have to be going? I'm busy. I'm busy. Right? Let's hear.
I pray thee, have me excused.
Right?
They were too busy with the cares of this life. The first saying unto him, I have bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it.
Right?
I pray thee, have me excused.
Right?
And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to prove them.
Right?
I pray thee, have me excused.
You see how busy they are? Right?
And another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come.
You see how busy?
On the other hand, David's followers typify those who are found in the streets and the lanes of the city.
Right?
The poor and the maimed, and the halt and the blind.
Those are the people you find in the feast. Be it a feast, be it a conference, you find those people.
Amen.
Be it you want any meeting to do with God, you will find those. But those who are under Saul and under Laodicea, they always have an excuse for not keeping God's times. Right? Immediately,
after Saul was informed by Samuel that because of his unfaithfulness, God had rejected him as the ruler over his people, Samuel was sent secretly to anoint David to reign in Saul's stead.
Did you see how this happened? When Samuel told Saul that God has rejected you, this act of anointing David was in secret. God sent Samuel secretly to anoint David so that Saul does not know. Right? And let's hear.
David, and though Saul was told that the Lord had rejected him, yet he refused to abdicate, with the result that the Philistines were besetting his army and were about to take the kingdom. The giant Goliath had stood and cried unto the armies of Israel and said unto them,
why do you think there was this war with these Philistines? God wanted to prove a point that now come the war, and we have a war where the Goliath is coming. Is it? Goliath is coming. We had Goliath. Goliath is on his way. Which is the Goliath? The mark of the beast. It's there. It's coming. It's already there. But God allowed Goliath so to prove a point. Let's hear now. This is the story. Let's hear.
The giant Goliath had stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array?
Right.
Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul?
Right.
Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me.
Right.
If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me.
That's 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 8 to 11. That's it, right?
Then will we be your servants.
Right.
But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and servants.
It was just one person. They were being asked, one person to come and fight Goliath. Did they find one? Those who were under Saul, did they find one person to fight Goliath? Now let's hear. Let's hear. Go further. And the Philistine said,
I've lost it.
Right. Let me read it for you. 1 Samuel 17, verse 8 to 9. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. So you're going to start next from the paragraph. It says, though not, but a stripling despised. Right. They were all afraid of this big giant. Do we have a big giant coming? Yes. The mark of the beast. What is the mark of the beast? The mark of the beast is where God's laws are trifled with. Be it the 10 Commandments and the festivals. That comes with the mark of the beast on our forehead. But listen to that. They failed to find one person who can keep God's laws so that they fight Goliath. So they were all dancing along with Goliath because Goliath was saying, I only want one. Otherwise, if there is no one, we are all together. Now, let's hear more. Though not, but a stripling despised by his brothers. Right.
And but lowly regarded by all the others, David said to Saul.
So you remember how David had to join them because they've left him home, heading cattle as usual. But he was sent now with food at the army there. And then when he went to the army to bring the brothers, to give the brothers the food, then he heard this man calling out for one man. Did you see it? That's where we are now. Let's hear.
Let no man's heart fail because of him.
So David now hears that and he says, because he's anointed. He's anointed. And he says, let no man's heart fail because of this man. Listen to the answer from David.
Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine.
Just as he just approached the army with the food, he just said, I will go. Thy servant now is going to go to Saul, telling Saul, don't worry. What was Saul doing? Saul was failing to fight the mark of the beast, failing to keep the festivals. Saul did not wanted to keep only the 10 Commandments without festivals. So David says, this man, I'm going to fight him. Listen to how he's going to fight this man. Listen to that.
And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones.
How many stones?
5 smooth stones.
5 smooth stones. Right.
Out of the brook.
Right.
And put them in his shepherd's bag.
Right.
Which he had, even in a scrip.
Why the Bible is so strict to tell us exactly what he picked and how many stones.
5 smooth.
And yet he was going to use only 1 stone, but he picked 5. Right?
And put them in his shepherd's bag,
which
he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine.
Right.
And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone.
1 stone.
And slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead.
How simple it was for David to destroy the mark of the beast. How simple was it to keep both laws, both ceremonial and moral laws, and yet Saul was busy with the army of Israel. Saul was busy, cannot fight the mark of the beast. Cannot. But it was so easy for David, just took one stone from the 5 stones David had picked. Did you see? This is an allegory of what is happening now. We will interpret that. Now let's hear.
And slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth.
Right.
So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him.
Right.
But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore,
there was no sword, but he just took a stone. He picked 5, but used 1. Yes. There is an allegory to that. Now let's hear.
Therefore, David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith.
Right.
And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled.
Right. So we can see Goliath had been there since the Dark Ages. Goliath had already trifled with God's religious laws and festivals. Saul, all this time, cannot change these laws back to what it was before the man of sin has tripled. Saul continues even to keep those laws that the pagans put them. Saul had no strength, but David did it. And we are told David picked 5 stones, but with 1 stone, pack. This is what happened. Now, we want to understand, let's go to Revelation chapter 13, verse 8 tract 58.1. Let's hear, why do we have that story? Why do we have these 5 stones which were not even used? Why? David's victory. Listen to that.
David's victory over the giant, against whom no one was able to make war, typifies the victory of the church, the house of David, in the time of trouble.
So in the time of trouble, what do we have in Zechariah chapter 12, verse 8? In the time of trouble, what do we have? 12, verse 8. What do we have in the time of trouble? Zechariah chapter 12, verse 8. What is it?
In that day.
In that day.
Shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem.
Right.
And he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David.
Do you see how Zechariah is now figuring those who will succeed? He who will succeed is like David. Why do we have that in Zechariah chapter? When God has defended, has made salvation, everyone who will be found will be like David. What is it? There will be a group under David. That's what Zechariah is talking about. Now let's go back now. Let's hear David's victory now over the giant against whom no one was able to make war. Typifies the victory of the church under the name David. Which one is it? Not under the name Saul, not under the name Laodicea, but under the 8th, because Laodicea is the 7th. The 8th is under David. That's why we had 7 sons of Jesse who did not make it for the kingdom, but only one king, which was the 8th, is the one who made it. That's why we have 7 churches, and the last one being Laodicea did not make. They all had a problem. This one, you are not what you are rich and increased. This one, you lost the motherly love. This one, you can go and read all the 7 churches. But the only one which made it for the kingdom is the 8th under David. Amen. Did you understand that? Now you should understand the Bible. How it is written is an interesting book which God picked for us. Do you understand? Now here, let's hear. Right? Let's hear.
Who is like, okay.
Right.
Concerning whose
Zechariah 12, verse 8, in the time of trouble, such as never was, over the beast and his image. So what is the beast and the image? It is the antitypical Goliath. So Saul did not fight the beast and his image. Instead, it's David who fought Goliath. So the beast and the image is Goliath. You should know from today. The beast and his image is Goliath. But did Saul, when he's deleting all the feasts and saying they were nailed to the cross, is he also part of the system of the beast? Because the beast is the one that changed the times and laws. So when Saul failed to fight Goliath, was sitting there weak and helpless when the mark of the beast was there. But David came and said, shall I go and kill Goliath? Shall I go and defeat the mark of the beast? Do you understand now? Now let's see. How does that come in concerning whose formidableness? The Revelator asks. We are going to read from the Revelation chapter 13, verse 17. Let's hear. Who is like unto the beast? Listen to that.
Who is like unto the beast?
Who was uttering that statement? Goliath. Who can choose one to come and fight me? Who is... this is what Saul was doing when he's sitting on the chair. When Goliath was saying, come, choose one person to fight me. But what was Paul saying? Saul was saying, who can fight this man? Who can fight this? That's what Saul is saying right now. Who can fight the pagan feast? Who can fight the mark of the beast? Who can, when you find him uttering happy Father's Day, happy Christmas, happy, this is what Saul is saying, happy, this, and he's actually saying, who can fight the beast? Who can, we have that question on Revelation chapter 13, verse 17. Let's hear, chapter 17, who is like unto the beast? Listen to that.
Who is like unto the beast?
Right?
Who is able to make war with him?
So the whole army, when they were watching this Philistine Goliath boasting, what were they all saying before David arrived? Who is this? Who can fight this Goliath? Who can fight this? Who can change the mark of the beast? Who can change the pagan laws? Who can change Christmas? Who can change this mother, whatever, Valentine, this, you know, sometimes we take even those days and put them in our lives and say, who can change the birthday? Hey, who is the birthday? They all came from that day, this birthday. They came from that day of birth. The day of birth of Christ is also the day of yours. Where is the verse which says you should keep that day? Where is it? Who is like, who can stop this? Who can, this is what Saul was saying. And those who follow him. Do you understand? Now let's hear. Who is like unto, right?
Who is like unto the beast?
Right?
Who is able to make war with him? The giant Goliath accordingly represents those who now defy the servants of God.
Right?
And who shall comprise the image of the beast?
Those who are persecuting you, who are taking you and disfellowshipping you for the present truth. These are the ones who are on the side of Saul, who are praising the giant Goliath. Who can do this? Who, you think you can change this? You think you alone can change this pagan laws? You alone. They're all nailed to the cross. Then who can? This is the order of the day in our day. Let's hear that. Let's hear more.
The giant Goliath accordingly represents those who now defy the servants of God.
Right.
And who shall comprise the image of the beast.
Right.
That religio-political system which shall defy the armies of the Lord and issue a decree that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast. Or the
This
number
mark of the
his
beast
name.
will be to do with these two laws. Forget about whatever you are being told in these medicine. Forget about them. They are there to help you. But the mark of the beast is the two laws. Yeah. So don't be, they're most undersold. They are telling you lies. That this is the mark of the, don't have this medicine. Forget about that. The mark of the beast has to do with these two laws, the moral law and the ceremonial law. Yes. And Saul was busy there. Who can fight this Goliath? And the Goliath is the mark of the beast. Who can fight the mark of the beast? Who can change these times? While he was also busy changing the times and laws and going to wrong dates of camp meeting, wrong time of Lord's Supper. No, all this was in support of Goliath. Now let's hear more. Want to finish that paragraph only, and then we can leave for next week.
The giant Goliath accordingly represents those who now defy the servants of God, and who shall comprise the image of the beast, that religio-political system which shall defy the armies of the Lord, and issue a decree that no man might buy or sell, that save he that hath the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed.
Right. So we are going to go to the 5 smooth stones, but because of time, we will start from the 5 smooth stones when we come next Sabbath. Why did he pick 5 smooth stones? Why did David do that? But we know for a fact Goliath was killed by David, not by Saul. Saul will never kill David. Goliath. Saul will never do that. Saul was sitting there watching this Goliath defying the armies of God, but Goliath picked 5 stones. When we meet next, we will debate more about these 5 stones. You and I will enjoy that prophecy if we open our minds so that we can know the drama, praying, coming from God, making sure that you are in the right camp before he ends this world. Don't go after numbers, but go after the word of God, which comes clearly and simply so that you understand and make your calling and election sure for the kingdom. May God bless you.